Today's notes are all about relations with an equation. Relations with an equation. Remember, a relation we defined as a relationship between two variables. So far, we have looked at a relation either as a set of ordered pairs. So we have an x and then a y. We can also plot that point on the coordinate plane. The relation can be given by a bunch of ordered pairs, or a lot of times it's given as a table. Today, our relationship between two variables is going to be given by an equation, and then we are going to form ordered pairs that belong to that relation. So example 1, we are given an equation. An equation, remember, has an equal sign. Now we have two variables, both an x and a y. Our equation is y equals negative 2x plus 3. And we are asked to complete the table. So within the table, notice we have an XY chart, a table of values. We are given some x values, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we need to find the corresponding y values. To do that, this negative 2 is an x value, so we just go to our equation and we replace the x with a negative 2. So I'm going to put negative 2 in for my x, and we're going to figure out what y is when x is negative 2. So I have y equals negative 2, and instead of x, I'm putting in negative 2 plus 3. Negative 2x plus 3, I replace the x with a negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 gives me 7. When x is negative 2, y equals 7. And now we do the same thing, but we replace the x with a negative 1. So we have y equals negative 2 times negative 1 plus 3. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 plus 3 gives me y equals 5. And so on. We replace the x instead of with a negative 1, we replace it with a 0. Y equals negative 2 times 0 plus 3. Multiply gives us 0. 0 plus 3 gives me 3. And keep going. Y equals negative 2 times 1 plus 3. Negative times positive is negative. 2 times 1. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Replace the x with a 2. Multiply and add. And last one it looks like is x is 3. Y equals negative 2 times 3 plus 3. We multiply first, and then we add the 3. Each of these points, negative 2, 7, negative 2 for x and 7 for y, makes this equation true. Negative 1 for x and 5 for y makes the equation true, and so on. Example 2 looks a little bit different. It says y equals x squared minus 3. Y equals x squared minus 3. And it gives us a table. It doesn't have quite as many values to plug in this time. Negative 3, negative 1, 0, and 2. We start by replacing x with negative 3. So if I replace the x with negative 3, it looks like this. Next thing I'm going to do is square. Square means multiply it times itself. -3 times -3 is 9. 9 minus 3 gives me 6. Replace the x with a -1. -1 squared, -1 times -1 is 1 minus 3. -2. Plug in 0. Look like this. Y equals 0 squared minus 3. 0 times 0 is 0. Minus 3 is -3. And plug in 2. Two squared is 4. 2 times 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. And we have completed the table. I may ask you to do other things from there. You might have to state the domain and range. Domain, remember, is the x's, the range is the y's. Let's actually go ahead and write those down. Domain, we use the curly brackets to show that it's a set. It's the x's, starting with the smallest one and getting bigger. And the range is the y values. Notice the smallest one's the -3, and then -2, and then 1, and then 6. If any of them happen to repeat, we would not plot them twice, or list them twice. We would just list it once. One other thing real quick, this one's not like this, but let's suppose it said 2x squared, what was that, plus 3, and we're not going to plot a bunch of points, but I've got x, y, and if I plug in 3 for x, so it's going to look like this, 2 times 3 squared plus 3. And the question is, what's the first thing I need to do here? Think through your order of operations, because a lot of students do this, and don't write this down because it's wrong. They do 2 times 3 is 6 squared plus 3. 6 squared is 36 plus 3 is 39. If we think through our order of operations, it's been a little while since we've done order of operations. Remember, it's PEMDAS, written like this, parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide, add and subtract. So we do parentheses first. Oh, that's just 3. Now we have to do exponents. We do exponents next. 3 squared is 9. Now we can multiply and then finally add. So we do need to do the exponents before you multiply. We don't multiply before you do exponents. This one, there was no number out here, so we didn't have to worry about that. Example 3. Example 3, there is one more after this. It says y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. Y equals absolute value of x minus 2. A quick refresher, these symbols here, these are called absolute value symbols. And absolute value is defined as the distance from 0. Distance from 0. Because it's always a distance we always report as a positive number. So we would say that -7 is 7 units away from 0. So the absolute value of -7 is +7. The absolute value of +7, 7 is also 7 units away from 0. What a lot of students remember to do is they just take whatever's inside there and make it positive. That's a fine way to think through absolute value. So it's a negative number inside there, I make it positive. If it was a positive number inside there, I just keep it positive. If it's 0, you can't really have a positive 0, but the absolute value of 0 is 0. So that said, let's go ahead and start plugging in our x's. I'm going to start by plugging in -3. It would say y equals the absolute value of -3 minus 2. Well, -3 minus 2 is -5. And the absolute value of -5, we just said take whatever's inside there and make it positive, would be positive 5. Plug in 0. Putting 0 in for the x. 0 minus 2 is -2. The absolute value of -2 is positive 2. And keep going. Plug in 1. 1 minus 2 is -1. The absolute value of -1 is positive 1. Plug in 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. And plug in 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. Absolute value of 4 is 4. So filling out a table given an equation, we just plug the values they give us in for x and we evaluate for y. Example 4 is a little bit different in that it doesn't give us an equation this time. Instead, it is giving us a graph. Didn't work. There we go. So I'll give you a minute to copy the graph down. Again, we're trying to fill in the table. We want to fill in the table of values. Whoa. Given the graph. So instead of given an equation, we're given a graph. So go ahead, take a minute to copy that graph into your notes. The instructions are the same. Complete the table. They give us various x values. We need to find the corresponding y value. To do this, we simply look at, we've got x is -2. Remember, this is my x-axis. Not that. This is our x-axis. The vertical axis is our y-axis. So we go to where x is -2. X is -2 right here. Find the point on the graph that has an x value of -2. And the y value of that point is 1. When x is 0 right here. The graph is right there when x is 0. That has a y value of 1, 2, 3. When x is 2, my y value is -1. And when x is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, my y value is -1, 2, 3, 4, 5.